In the previous video, you learned about analyzing DeFi balance sheet. Now we'll put it to good use to learn more about Bluejay's balance sheet in this video. Similarly to before, we will have this T-shaped diagram where asset is on the left side and liabilities and equities is on the right side. When Bluejay starts with the treasury bootstrapped during the launch, we will start by raising $5 million worth of DAI. So that goes onto the assets side of the list. While at the same time, we will issue out tokens, the governance token that represents shares to the protocol. And you can see that at this point in time, because there is no liabilities on the right side of it, the $5 million worth of DAI actually accrues towards the equity. So at this point in time, the equity holders have a total value of $5 million. Now let's take a look at what happens when we mint our first BlueSGD stablecoins. Let's say the protocol chooses to mint $4 million worth of BlueSGD. Remember that the protocol does not mint BlueSGD out of thin air. Instead, it also provides the equivalent amount of capital as liquidity. So in this case, what happened is that $4 million worth of DAI and $4 million worth of BlueSGD get transferred to Uniswap as a liquidity. Instead, the Uniswap now gives back to the protocol $8 million worth of LP token. So we will now add it to our assets, DAI, BlueSGD, LP token. From before, you can see that the asset side is only 5 million. Now, the total is actually 5 minus 4 plus 8, with a total of $9 million on the assets. On the other side, you would see that there is a total of $4 million of liabilities. That means equity holders still have $5 million accrued to them. This means that the equity holder does not lose or gain simply because the protocol chooses to mint its blue stablecoins. Now let me tidy up this balance sheet. At this point in time, you can see that all $4 million worth of BlueSGD exists only on Uniswap and not in external circulations. And all of this are owned by the protocol right now. Now suppose that someone were to go to the protocol and swap up $500,000 of BlueSGD. What that would do is that it will shift the price of SGD to be more expensive than before. The protocol will then realize that the price is now more expensive and continue to expand the supply of BlueSGD into the market. To do so, it will mean exactly another $500,000 worth of BlueSGD token. The protocol will conduct what is known as an open market operation by swapping this additional $500,000 worth of BlueSGD tokens for DAI in the Uniswap pool. So what happens is that the protocol will now receive another $500,000 worth of DAI on this side, simply because it has swapped $500,000 worth of BlueSGD for it. So you can see at this point in time, the balance sheet expands yet again, where $500,000 is added on the liability side and $500,000 is added on the asset side. On top of all of this, the amount of liquidity still sits at $8 million because the protocol has not yet increased its liquidity position. However, because there is natural arbitrage in this operation, there is extra fees added into the asset. This is because the protocol will only perform the open market operation of selling more BlueSGD token into the market only when the prices of BlueSGD is higher than the FX market out there. This means the protocol has earned an excess of arbitrage revenue, which will be added to the asset as fees. Now, if you were to take a look at the balance sheet now, you can see that the total on the assets right now is 8 plus 1 plus 0.5, which is 9.5 plus million dollars worth of assets. On the liability, it has $4.5 million worth of liability, and this means that equity holder has $5 million plus worth of equity, and this is greater than before. And this plus actually comes from the fees that were accrued earlier, simply because the protocol has earned arbitrage revenue when it performs the swaps. Now let me clean up this balance sheet and see what happens when we contract the supply of stable coins in the market. So now let's say that the market decided to sell $0.3 million worth of Bluejay into the Uniswap. What would happen is that the Uniswap price of Bluejay would now be cheaper than that of the FX market. This means that the protocol will perform an open market operation to shrink its balance sheet by reducing the supply of Bluejay. How it does so is that it will deploy DAI and swap it against Bluejay. So on the left side of the balance sheet, we will now take $0.3 million worth of DAI, and in exchange, we actually get slightly more than $0.3 million plus of Bluejay. The reasons it is like that is because the Bluejay on the market is now cheaper than before. That means for the same amount of DAI, I can get back more amount of Bluejay. That means I'm wiping out more liabilities than when I created it. Now, if we were to sum up both sides of the assets and liability, on the asset side, we can see we have $1.5 million minus $0.5 million plus $8 million plus previously accrued fee. This means that on the asset side, we would have 9.2 million plus of assets. And on the liability, right now we have 4.5 minus 0.3 million plus. That means we would have 4.2 plus million dollars worth of liabilities. In this case, we can see that the protocol earns from arbitrage revenue when expanding the supply of the stablecoin, as well as contracting from the supply of the stablecoins from these two examples. In this example, the equity of the governance token holder increased from $5 million with the first set of fees from the expansion and the second set of fee from the contraction as well. With that, we can go back to the solvency and liquidity constraint that we discussed earlier. We can see that at any point in time, the protocol will be well capitalized to ensure that it is solvent. That means it has excess of assets over liabilities. In addition, because the protocol provides the liquidity directly for its own stablecoin, it also ensures that its stablecoin can be swapped in and out from the market whenever necessary. Thank you for staying tuned to the video, and I'll see you in the next video where we go into the details of the different launch stage of Bluejay protocol.